I walked into the club for 1 minute to drag my idiot little brother home, and walked out already bound to the most dangerous alpha in the city. At least that was the plan. In, find Jamie, out. No drama, no clause, no counsel. The plan died the second I stepped into Luxuria. Luxuria isn't the kind of place you find on a map. It's the kind of place you hear about in the wrong kind of whispers, half rumor, half threat. The air hit me first, cold and sharp, like someone had bottled midnight and broken it over the door. Then came the smell. Pine resin, hot metal, something wild under the cologne and alcohol. The ceiling was a sheet of black glass, reflecting the people below like a dark second world. Runes pulsed faintly around the edges, casting neon lines of light, down the walls and along the floor, guiding the crowd deeper inside. The whole place felt like a cathedral designed by someone who worshipped money, blood, and good lighting. I pulled my hood lower over my face and tried not to look like prey. Stay calm, I muttered under my breath, squeezing the strap of my messenger bag. In, find Jamie, out. Easy. My heart didn't get the memo. It hammered in my chest, a frantic drum that matched the bass shaking the floor. The music wasn't just sound, it vibrated in my ribs, in my teeth, in the back of my skull. My nerves lit up, and for a split second, my instincts flared, the part of me that knew exactly what kind of creatures filled this place. Alphas, betas, omegas, and me, doing my best impression of completely normal human. Thanks. Nothing to see here. I slipped between bodies in tailored jackets and shimmering dresses, dodging tails, shoulders, and the occasional careless hand with claws. The runic floor lines glowed beneath my boots, thin veins of blue-white light, pulsing in time with the music, like the building itself had a heartbeat. I knew this club. I'd painted half the damn murals in the very important person corridors. Moody wolves, dark forests, stylized moon phases. Side job. Under the table, don't ask too many questions. Money's money when rent doesn't care. But I'd never been here on a ritual night. Jamie. I scanned every face, every corner, breathing faster. My palms were damp. I wiped them on my jeans and kept moving. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I fumbled it out, hoping for a message. Nothing. Just my reflection in the black screen, dark curls escaping my hood, tired brown eyes, that too sharp jaw that made people call me cute until I snapped at them. Where are you? I hissed, shoving the phone back. A chime rang out over the music, clean and cutting, and the conversation around me shifted, energy tightening like a noose. A voice floated from the central speaker system, smooth as silk and twice as smug. Patrons of Luxuria, the fourth binding ritual will commence in 5 minutes. All marked participants, please proceed to the lower hall. Fourth binding ritual. My stomach dropped. No. Jamie had texted me 3 hours ago. It's fine, Rye. I've got a way to clear my debt. Don't worry so much. He was exactly the kind of stupid who would think ritual sounded better than getting his kneecaps broken. I shoved past a group of laughing betas and headed for the stairs at the back, ignoring the glares. The neon rune lines on the floor flowed in the same direction. Down, like a glowing current pulling people into the depths. A guard stepped in front of me at the stairwell entrance. He was massive, broad shoulders stretching his black shirt, eyes slightly golden in the dim light. Definitely alpha. Restricted, he rumbled. I flashed him my staff badge, the one I wasn't technically supposed to still have. Art department, I said, injecting just enough boredom into my voice. They want me downstairs to fix the circle. Someone smeared the chalk last time, remember? Big drama. Lots of shouting. He frowned, clearly searching his memory for chalk drama. Rituals use carved stone, he said slowly. Yeah, and decorative chalk. I lied smoothly. It's all about the aesthetic, very cinematic. Your boss screamed for 20 minutes, said if it ever happened again he'd skin someone. I'd really like it not to be me, so... I rolled my eyes like a long-suffering employee. That part didn't require acting. The guard hesitated. Somewhere below us, another chime sounded, deeper this time. He stepped aside with a grunt. Make it quick. Trust me, I would love nothing more, I muttered, and took the stairs 2 at a time. The music muffled as I went down, replaced by something quieter, more intimate. A low, ritualistic hum underlying the faint buzz of enchanted lighting. The temperature dropped. The smell of pine grew stronger, mingled with something coppery. My skin prickled. The lower hall opened before me, vast and circular. The black glass ceiling here was higher, and the walls were carved stone, old and heavy, etched with the same runes that flowed like veins through the club above. Glowing lines converged on the center of the room, where a wide stone disc was set into the floor, a ritual circle, its surface covered in precise engravings. Around it, a small crowd had gathered, dressed in their midnight best. Some wore masks. Others didn't bother. And there, near the edge of the circle, stood Jamie. He looked too small, too pale. His blonde hair, usually a messy halo, was slicked back in a way that made him seem younger. He wore a simple black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. No jewelry, no distractions. His eyes, blue and wide, were fixed on the center stone like it was a guillotine. My heart lurched. "Jamie," I hissed. His head snapped up. Our eyes met. Guilt flashed across his face like lightning. "Rye, what are you doing here?" he whispered, already edging toward me. Before he could move, a robed attendant stepped in front of him, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Participant 1, the attendant said, voice cool. "Remain where you are." Participant, like he was a lab rat. Rage burned through my panic, sharp and clean. I started walking fast. Nobody paid attention at first, I was just another shadow in a hood. "Jamie Larson," a voice intoned near the circle, reading from a scroll. "Debt bearer, marked." "Nope," I snapped, shoving between two onlookers. "We're done here." A few heads turned. The attendant frowned. "Sir, you can't." "I can, actually." I grabbed Jamie's wrist, yanking him toward me. "We're leaving." His skin was cold and clammy under my fingers. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing?" he breathed. "You shouldn't be." "I told you I'd handle it," I hissed back. "You're not sacrificing yourself because you can't stop borrowing money from people with questionable fashion sense." "Sir," the attendant's voice sharpened. "The ritual has begun. You cannot interfere. Watch me." Hands closed around my upper arms, guards, heavier, stronger. Claws pricked through my jacket, not quite breaking skin. My instinct screamed, that buried omega sense shoving fear up my spine, but I refused to flinch. "Let go," I snapped, twisting. "You've got the wrong Larson." The floor under my feet vibrated. The rune lines around the circle flared, bright enough to hurt. A deep, resonant pulse rolled through the room, like the club itself had taken a breath. The stone disc at the center came alive. No chalk, no candles, just light, piercing white-blue light that surged along the engravings, tracing complex patterns until the whole surface glowed. "Fourth binding ritual, phase 1, the scroll reader announced. "Selection of compatible pair." I don't know if it was bad luck or perfect timing. Probably both. One of the guards jerked me backward. I stumbled. My grip on Jamie slipped, and I fell, momentum carrying me forward instead of away. Straight into the circle. My knees slammed onto stone. Pain shot up my legs. My hand flew out to catch myself, and landed on the central carving, where a shallow groove formed a small waiting basin. The heat hit me a second later. It was like touching a live wire. The stone burned against my palm, and I bit back a yell. My skin split, I felt it, sharp and hot. And then something warm slid down my fingers. Blood. It dripped into the groove. The runes on the stone disc screamed. Light exploded outward, a sudden blinding corona that stole my breath. The hum in the air turned into a roar, and the entire room seemed to tilt. I heard shouting. I heard Jamie scream my name. I heard my own heartbeat thunder in my ears like a war drum. The ritual grabbed me. Not my body, my center, my chest. The part of me that I tried very hard to pretend didn't exist. Omega. Something whispered inside the light. Mine. Absolutely not, I thought back. Because apparently I was now arguing with ancient magic. The glow narrowed, focusing, funneling upward in a twisting column. It felt like invisible hands were rifling through me, searching, measuring. My vision blurred at the edges, black creeping in, but I couldn't look away from the light. And then, I felt it. Another presence. Cold and sharp and overwhelming, like moonlight on a blade. It wasn't inside the circle. It was above it, descending. A gravitational pull of authority and power that made every instinct in me flatten to the ground and beg. I bared my teeth instead. The light dimmed enough that I could see shapes again. The room had gone silent. All eyes were fixed on the figure stepping into the edge of the circle, the runes parting around him like obedient waves. He was tall. Broad shoulders, long lines. The kind of posture that said the world moved when he told it to. His suit was midnight black, perfectly cut, not a wrinkle in sight. His tie was the same color as the glowing runes, a subtle thread of power against the austerity. Black hair, sleek and straight, fell just long enough to brush the collar of his jacket. His skin was pale in the ritual light, jaw sharp enough to cut stone. And his eyes? Silver. Not just gray. Silver, bright and clear and cold as a winter moon, taking everything in, missing nothing. The air tightened. People around us bowed their heads. Judge. My brain supplied uselessly. Counsel. Important. Dangerous. I already hated him. He stepped closer, the runes brightening under his polished shoes, and looked down at me where I knelt in the center of the circle like some kind of sacrificed pigeon. His gaze flicked to my hand on the carving, to the blood, to the way the light arced between the marks and my skin. Something cool and calculating shifted behind his eyes. The circle has chosen, the scroll reader breathed. The 5th ritual has been invoked. 5th? Great. So we'd skipped a few levels of disaster. My throat felt dry, but my mouth worked anyway. Oh, no, I said hoarsely, lifting my chin. You've got the wrong guy. I am absolutely not your Omega. I was just... My brain scrambled for something normal. Out for bread. A muscle in his jaw ticked. His aura pressed against me, heavy and inevitable, like the moment before a storm breaks. When he spoke, his voice was low and smooth, but it carried through the hall like a verdict. The bond has been initiated, he said. The 5th ritual recognizes you. Those silver eyes locked onto mine, and something inside my chest lurched, yanked forward as if hooked. There are no more questions, he finished. You are mine. If I'd had even a shred of survival instinct, I would have stayed frozen in that circle. But I've never been known for great decisions, so the second the ritual light dimmed and people stopped staring like I'd sprouted extra limbs, I bolted. The hall exploded into shouting, guards barking orders, attendants scrambling to restore, the circle, someone yelling my name. But I was already halfway to the nearest exit. My legs moved on pure adrenaline, slipping on smooth stone, dodging hands that reached for me. I shoved through the crowd, heart pounding, lungs tight. The corridor swallowed me whole, velvet-lined walls, gilded trim, mirrors reflecting every angle of my panic. The lighting here was dim, intentionally seductive, the kind of glow that made secrets look glamorous and danger look like a dance. I didn't slow. If I get out of this alive, I gasped. I am kidnapping Jamie and moving to... What's the opposite of a werewolf city? Antarctica? My shoulder slammed into a wall as something yanked at my chest, not physically but internally, like a hook buried under my ribs. I staggered. No, stop doing that. I clutched my sternum. The pull got stronger the farther I ran, a taut thread snapping, snarling, reeling me back. The 5th ritual. The bond. It wasn't metaphorical. It was dragging me. Absolutely not, I hissed at the invisible force. You don't get to puppeteer me. I barely let Netflix autoplay, and that's only when I'm depressed. The pull surged, sharp enough to make my breath hitch. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not loud. Not rushed. Just steady. Deliberate. Certain. Each one echoed down the corridor like it owned the place. Which, to be fair, the man attached to them probably did. I spun. Chest heaving. Thorn stood at the far end of the hallway. He wasn't even trying to be dramatic. He just existed that way. Tall, controlled, dangerous in the quietest possible manner. His black suit didn't have a single wrinkle, despite the chaos downstairs. His silver eyes fixed on me as if he had calculated every one of my possible escape routes and found them all adorable. Stay away, I warned, palms sweaty, shoulders tense. One dark brow rose a millimeter. I'm not pursuing you. Well, good, because you're coming back on your own. A fresh wave of pressure clamped down on my ribs. I stumbled forward a step, glaring. That's cheating. It is the bond, which I did not sign up for. You stepped into the circle. I threw my hands up. I tripped. Thorn's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, like the faintest ripple of amusement. He didn't smile. He didn't even twitch, but I felt the smallest pulse through the connection, like his version of a chuckle. Infuriating. Come with me, he said, turning as if he was certain I'd follow. I stayed planted. No. He paused, looked over his shoulder. Ryan. I flinched, not at the tone, at the sound of my name in that voice. Deep, resonant, a little too intimate for someone I'd met 5 minutes ago and immediately wanted to fight. "I'm not your Omega," I said firmly. "I never said you were." He approached, slow enough not to trigger my flight response. Close enough that I smelled pine and something colder beneath it. "The ritual said so." "That ritual is stupid." "I agree." I blinked. "Wait, you do?" "I don't like rituals," he answered simply. "But I respect the danger of breaking them." There was something under his cool tone, reluctance, resentment? I couldn't tell. Before I could ask, he reached for my wrist. I jerked back. "Hands to yourself, Judge Moonlight Murder." "I need to mark you." Try that sentence again with a little less horror movie energy. "It's a compatibility sigil," he explained, patience thinning. "It will help stabilize the connection." "And if I say no? Then the bond will destabilize." His gaze held mine. "And an Omega can die from that?" My stomach dropped. "Fine," I muttered. "But only because I like living." He took my wrist gently, not what I expected, and traced a fingertip along the inside. Heat bloomed there, a spark under my skin. I sucked in a breath as pale blue light flared, forming a small crescent-shaped mark that glowed faintly. "What is that?" I whispered. "A resonance marker." His voice softened, not warm but less razor-edged. "It reacts to strong emotions." "Oh great, a mood ring." "For my soul." "Exactly." That wasn't a compliment. "I know." He released my wrist, stepping back. The pull in my chest eased, not gone but less suffocating. "Tomorrow," Thorn said, "you will come to my office for the first compatibility session." I crossed my arms. "Yeah? And what if I don't?" He didn't threaten me. Didn't flex aura. Didn't growl. He just looked at me with that calm, immovable certainty. "You will come," he said. "Because you want answers." Damn it. He wasn't wrong. I swallowed, forcing my chin up. "Fine, 1 session." Only to prove this ritual picked the wrong guy. Thorn inclined his head, as if that settled everything. "It didn't," he said quietly. "And somehow that scared me more than everything else tonight. If you've never had your entire emotional life projected on stone walls like some deranged art house film, I don't recommend it." Luxuria's main ritual hall looked different in daylight. Well, daylight was generous. It was still technically night. But the club had dimmed the neon excess, and dialed up the ancient temple aesthetic. The circular chamber felt bigger. Its high ceiling lost in shadow. Black stone pillars ringed the room, carved with runes that glowed a muted blue. Thin lines of light traced the floor in intricate patterns, converging on the central disk where I'd ruined my life yesterday. Cold air slid over my skin, sharp as the inside of a freezer. The smell of pine was stronger here, mingled with something resinous, almost like burned incense. My breath came out in faint puffs. I hugged myself, wishing I'd worn something thicker than my battered denim jacket. Thorn stood near the circle, speaking quietly with a robed attendant. His black suit had been traded for something slightly less formal, dark, slacks, a charcoal shirt with the sleeves rolled, the top button undone. It should have made him look less intimidating. It did not. His presence still filled the room, a steady pulse against my senses. Authority sat on his shoulders like a tailored accessory. The runes seemed brighter when he moved. I hated that I noticed. He dismissed the attendant and turned toward me. "You came," I snorted, because my mouth had a mind of its own. Wow, was I supposed to feel honored? "You were supposed to feel compelled by basic survival instincts." He studied me for a moment. "You slept?" Define slept. His gaze flicked to the faint glow on the inside of my wrist, the resonance mark he'd given me. It pulsed weakly, a soft blue crescent. "You were anxious," he said. "You snooped." "It's my sigil. I'm the one wearing it." Something like exasperated patience crossed his face. "Ryan." I sighed, blowing out a puff of cold air. I slept for 3 hours, woke up panicking, contemplated moving to Canada, and then remembered, I'm broke. "Happy?" He did not look happy. But the corners of his mouth relaxed by 0.5 millimeter, which I was starting to suspect was his version of a shrug. "It will get easier as the bond stabilizes," he said. "That sounds fake, but okay." He stepped closer to the circle, and gestured for me to follow. I went, feeling the familiar pull in my chest tighten as we approached the engraved stone. "Today is a preliminary test," he said. "We will assess our compatibility." Oh good. I was worried we'd jump straight to matching tattoos. The fifth ritual doesn't bind bodies, Thorn continued, ignoring that. It binds essence, soul, instinct. The more compatible we are, the stronger the bond, and the less dangerous it becomes. Define dangerous. He met my eyes. Pain, madness. In extreme cases. He paused. Death. For the Omega. Usually, I repeated faintly. Wow. Really selling this? That's why we do this carefully. He stepped into the outer ring of the engravings. During the session, your emotions will manifest as visible projections. I will experience them with you through the bond. Like telepathy? Like drowning in someone else's storm and trying not to lose yourself, he said calmly. I swallowed. That's very reassuring. I don't say this to frighten you, he added. You deserve the truth. I don't tolerate lies. I blinked. That, at least, felt solid. Honest. A sharp line in a blurry mess. So what happens if you fail? I asked. You just, what, explode? If I cannot withstand your resonance, the ritual destabilizes. If you cannot handle the feedback from me, the same. So we both suffer. I rubbed the back of my neck. Great date idea. This is not a date. Wait until you see my emotional baggage. You'll change your mind. A flicker of something almost like amusement moved through our connection. Not visible on his face, but I felt it. A subtle shift, like warmth behind glass. Stand in the center, Thorn said. Feet on the core sigil, hands relaxed at your sides. You say that like I have a choice. You do. His gaze sharpened. You can walk away, the bond will hurt you for it, possibly kill you. But it will be your choice. He meant it. That was the worst part, knowing I was cornered by magic, not by him twisting my arm. He was just here, steady, unyielding. A wall I could lean on or smash my skull against. I stepped onto the center disc. The stone was cold under my boots. The engraved lines hummed faintly, like something breathing beneath the surface. Thorn joined me, standing just outside the inner circle, within arm's reach but not crossing the boundary. When the runes ignite, he said, don't fight the images. Let them come. The more you try to control them, the more painful it will be. Newsflash, I said tightly. My brand is control nothing and spiral internally. You're in luck. He didn't answer. He raised his hand, fingers splayed, and the runes responded. Blue light flared, racing along the engravings, forming concentric rings of glowing script around us. The temperature dropped another few degrees. The air thickened, like we were standing underwater. The mark on my wrist burned. My heart stuttered, then sped, pounding too loud in my ears. The pull in my chest snapped taut, connecting me to him like a live wire. Breathe, Thorn said quietly. Working on it. The light wasn't just around us anymore. It was in me. Something uncurled at the base of my spine, rushing upward in a surge of heat and colors I didn't have names for. My vision blurred at the edges, then sharpened, too sharp, every line and shadow crystal clear. My fear hit first. It crawled up my throat and spilled out, not as a feeling, but as shapes. Shadows stretched along the walls, taller and taller, distorting into long-fingered silhouettes with too many teeth. They weren't real, just my mind's cheap horror effects. But they moved when I flinched, crowding in. My breath hitched. Okay. That's new. They're your fears, Thorn said, voice steady. The ritual amplifies them. Don't fight them. Observe. Easy for you to say, I muttered, watching one shadow peel itself from the wall and loom. Its eyes glowed like headlights. My heart spasmed. You're not the one starring in my anxiety slideshow. Another emotion slammed into the first. Anger, hot and bright. The shadows shattered, replaced by streaks of color exploding across the air like someone had thrown paint at invisible glass. Crimson, electric yellow, acid green, strokes layered over each other, thick and messy and too vivid. My chest hurt. My fingers twitched, itching for a brush that wasn't there. You're projecting, Thorn said softly. Your artistic resonance is strong. Good, I gritted out. Maybe we can sell tickets. The colors twisted, reshaping. Thoughts rose, unbidden. Memories of Jamie laughing with his mouth full, of the eviction. Notice on our old door. Of me painting in a freezing apartment because heat costs money. Each memory became an image. Suspended in the air, a tiny kitchen table, a sketchbook. With coffee stains. A half-finished mural under flickering fluorescent lights. Shame burned under it all. Shame at being an Omega. At hiding. At wanting things I couldn't afford to want. The images blurred. Ryan. Thorn's voice cut through the noise. Stay with me. I looked at him. His silver eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the chaos I was spilling across the room. His jaw was tight. A muscle ticking there. He was feeling this with me. Every spike of fear, every flare of shame, every jagged streak of anger. Too much? I croaked. Intense, he said. But not too much. The bond between us pulsed. For a moment, I felt something from him. Cold, yes, but not cruel. A deep, steady reservoir of control shot through with a crack, a fracture line of something he kept hidden. Regret? Grief? It flashed and was gone. The ritual wasn't done. The colors around us darkened, deep blues and blacks bleeding in. A new image formed. Sharp and painfully clear. Me. Standing in the circle just like now, eyes wide and defiant and scared. Behind me, towering like a storm, a vague figure with silver eyes and outstretched hands. I swallowed. Wow. Subtle. Thorn's fingers flexed at his sides. I do not want to hurt you, he said quietly. Good, I said. Because if you do, I'm haunting you. Forever. I'll rearrange your bookshelf out of order every night. Despite everything. A short breath escaped him. Almost a laugh, strangled halfway. The runes around us brightened suddenly, then flickered. A jagged crack echoed through the chamber, not from the stone but from the bond itself. Pain sliced through me. White hot. I gasped, knees buckling. Thorn moved in an instant, crossing the line he was supposed to stay behind. His hand closed around my arm, anchoring me. The system didn't like that. Light surged between us, wild and unstable. For a terrifying second, I felt like I was being torn in two, one half dragged into him, the other yanked away. My vision whited out. Focus on my voice, he ordered. Ryan. Look at me. I clung to the sound, forcing my eyes open. He was close now. Too close. I could see faint lines at the corners of his eyes. The scar near his. Hairline half hidden by black strands, the tightness in his mouth. He wasn't untouched by this. Sweat beaded at his temple. His aura crackled, straining to stay controlled. Let it pass through, he said. Don't hold it. Don't block it. Just let it move. That's... I choked on a humorless laugh. That's terrible mental health advice. Do it anyway. I tried. The pain didn't vanish, but it thinned. It stopped feeling like a knife, and more like a current. Electric and overwhelming but moving. Images whirled past. My childhood bedroom, Jamie sleeping on my shoulder in a hospital waiting room. My first time shifting alone in the woods and thinking I was going to die. Thorn saw it all. I could feel him seeing. Not judging. Just witnessing. Then, just as abruptly as it began, the light snapped back into the runes. The projections vanished. The shadows, the colors, the memories, all gone, leaving only cold stone and my own ragged breathing. The resonance mark on my wrist went dark, then flared back to life with a softer, gentler glow. I swayed. Thorn's grip tightened, keeping me upright. Compatibility, he said hoarsely. Confirmed. I stared at him. His usually perfect composure was cracked. Not shattered but fissured. Hair slightly mussed, chest rising faster than normal. Eyes less icy. More human. And furious. Not at me. At the room. The circle. The runes. This procedure is barbaric, he said, voice low and sharp. We dress it up in rules and language and call it sacred, but it is nothing more than sanctioned violation. I blinked, thrown. You're the judge? Yes. His lip curled, just slightly. Which is why I know exactly how much cruelty we've legalized. For a moment, there was nothing but the echo of his words and the cold. He released my arm, stepping back, walls slamming back into place behind his eyes. You did well, he said. As if he hadn't just verbally stabbed the entire system he worked for. Your resonance is strong. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. It sounded like a compliment. His gaze met mine. For the first time there was no hint of viewing me as fragile or breakable. Just equal. Dangerous even. You are not weak, he said simply. Heat pricked the back of my neck. I looked away, heart doing something inconvenient in my chest. Great, I muttered, stepping off the circle, legs shaky. So that was, what? Our first compatibility session? Yes. It was worse than my worst first date, I said. Then, after a beat, quieter and, weirdly, not entirely horrible, his head tilted, as if he'd heard the part I hadn't meant to say so clearly. "We'll continue," he said. Carefully, I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets, trying to ignore the way my mark still hummed in time with his presence. "Fine," I sighed. "Round 1 didn't kill me. Let's see what disaster round 2 brings. If there's one thing worse than having your soul poked by ancient magic, it's doing it, and then realizing your family helped set the table." I found Jamie where I always found Jamie when things went bad, on the cracked steps outside our apartment building, hunched over with his hood up like the world couldn't see him if he couldn't see it. The city above Luxuria was nothing like the club. Up here, the neon was cheaper, the shadows less curated. Cars hissed over wet asphalt. Streetlights flickered. The air smelled like rain, exhaust, and the faint tang of frying food from the vendor at the corner. Jamie's leg bounced a mile a minute. His fingers worried at a frayed thread on his jeans. When he heard my footsteps, he flinched, then forced a grin that never made it to his eyes. "Hey," he said, too bright. "You're alive. That's good." I stopped in front of him, hands jammed into my jacket pockets to stop them from shaking. "Start talking." The grin cracked. "Rye, don't." My voice came out sharper than I intended. My mark warmed under my sleeve, probably reacting to the spike in my temper. But this wasn't about the bond. This was about us. "You knew about the ritual." He looked away, jaw working. "I knew about a ritual, not the one they did for you. You knew they wanted someone," I pushed. "You let them put you in that hall. You didn't text me to say, 'Hey, by the way, I'm about to sign up for magical debt relief.'" Silence stretched between us, taut as wire. He exhaled, shoulders slumping. "They said if I participated, the debt would be gone. Clean slate. No more collectors at the door, no more threats. I thought," he swallowed, "I thought I could fix it this one time, and you wouldn't have to save me again." A bitter laugh scraped out of me. "Yeah, that worked out great. I didn't know you'd—" His voice broke. "Rye, I didn't know you'd go into the circle. I thought you'd yell, maybe punch someone, drag me out like you always do. I didn't know the magic would pick you." The words landed heavy. He wasn't lying. I could tell. Lie detection is basically a sibling specialty. But there was more. "What else did they say?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. His fingers twisted that same loose thread until it snapped. They said." He swallowed again. "They said you were special. That you worked there anyway, that you'd be safe, that the judge, Thorn, that he doesn't let his omegas get hurt." My stomach twisted. "His omegas," I repeated, the phrase tasting like rust. Jamie's gaze darted up, panic flaring. "I didn't know they meant you, I swear, Rye. I swear on Mom's grave." That hurt. I looked away, jaw tight, staring at the rain-slicked street. A car rumbled by, headlights smearing across the puddles. My chest felt like someone had carved it out, leaving only cold air and the dull throb of my mark. "So they came to you," I said slowly. "They knew my name. They used you to get to me." He winced. "They said if you participated, everything would be taken care of. My debt, our rent, the hospital bills. They said you'd be compensated." Rage flared, sharp enough to make my vision swim. "Compensated," I echoed. "Like I'm a piece of equipment." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I thought I was making it better. I thought—" I held up a hand. I couldn't listen anymore. Not now. The betrayal wasn't clean, it was messy and human, and layered with love and desperation, which made it 10 times worse. I loved my brother. That wasn't in question. I just couldn't be near him without feeling like I was choking. "I need to go," I said. His eyes widened. "Where?" "Back to the club." "The club?" His voice went high with disbelief. "You just spent last night being light beamed into a bond with a scary alpha judge in a blood circle, and you want to go back?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I needed to know if what he said was true. Because my gut wouldn't shut up. Because the way the runes had reacted, like they'd been waiting, had been wrong. Because something about this stinks," I said. "And I'm done waiting for other people to explain my life to me." I turned away before I could see his expression, before my resolve cracked. The mark on my wrist pulsed, responding to my intent, like it agreed. For once I didn't argue with it. Luxuria's back entrance wasn't meant for guests. It was meant for deliveries and staff, people you didn't acknowledge unless their work went wrong. Perfect place for me. I slipped into the underground levels like I had a dozen times before for mural touch-ups after hours. The halls down here were narrower, more utilitarian. Exposed stone. Low ceilings. Fewer witnesses. The hum of the upper club was a faint heartbeat above my head. I stuck to the shadows, ears straining. Voices drifted from a side corridor, muffled at first, then clearer as I crept closer. Successful, someone said. Male, clipped, authoritative. The experiment with the pure omega has yielded a stable connection. Pure omega. My skin crawled. Another voice answered. Female. Smooth as glass. The bond activated faster than projected. The fifth ritual's reaction confirms the subject's viability. All that remains is to replicate the process on the next candidate. I pressed my back against the cold wall, pulse thundering. Subject. Viability. Next candidate. My hands curled into fists. We should inform the council, the man said. Not yet, the woman replied. Thorn will suspect manipulation. He's already resistant. A hint of annoyance colored her tone on his name. Let him think the circle chose independently. The more attached he becomes, the more leverage we gain. My breath caught. They hadn't just wanted an omega. They had wanted me. Specifically. And they had used him. My vision went narrow, edges darkening. Not from fear this time, but from a deep, clean fury that settled in my bones like ice. I was not an accident. I was an experiment. The worst part? They had been counting on Thorn to ensure the experiment survived. Footsteps shifted. I forced myself to move, slipping back down the corridor before their conversation ended and someone decided to wander. The cold of the stone bled through my jacket. My heart wouldn't slow down. Okay, I whispered to myself as I climbed the service stairway, each step echoing too loud. Okay. You wanted answers. You got them. My mark throbbed in time with my heartbeat, like the bond itself was listening. For once, I didn't lace the thought that followed with sarcasm. No deflection. No jokes. Just a simple, hard truth. I needed to talk to Thorn. Not as the scary alpha judge. Not as the man who'd stood in a glowing circle and claimed me because ancient magic said so. I needed to look him in those silver eyes and ask him one thing. How much of this did you know? And this time, I wasn't going to let him dodge the question. Thorn's office looked exactly like him. Clean lines, dark wood, black glass, everything in perfect ruthless order. The walls were lined with shelves full of old books and newer datapads, all arranged with uncomfortable precision. A single massive window took up most of one wall, overlooking the city, high enough that the lights below looked like someone had scattered jewels on black velvet. He stood with his back to me at first, hands clasped behind him, framed by the skyline. Judge of the city, king of this glass and stone tower. My mark buzzed under my sleeve the instant I stepped into the room, like it recognized its source. The door clicked shut behind me. Ryan, he said, without turning. You're early. Our next. Did you know? He stopped. Very slowly, he faced me. Silver eyes. Calm expression. The same man who had stood over a glowing ritual circle and said I was his. But there was something different now, something coiled tighter behind his gaze, like a wire drawn almost to breaking. Clarify your question, he said. I laughed, sharp and humorless. You want clarity? Great. Here's clarity. I overheard your friends downstairs. His jaw flexed almost imperceptibly. Experiment with a pure omega, I said, stepping farther into the room. Successful bond activation. Ready for the next candidate. Ring any bells, Judge? His aura tightened. The temperature in the room seemed to dip a degree. Who? He asked. Does it matter? I snapped. Council members. People who spoke about you like a tool. Let Thorn think the circle chose independently. The more attached he becomes, the more leverage we gain. Their words. Not mine. Silence stretched between us. Thin and brittle. You were not supposed to be in that hall, he said at last. Oh, that's comforting, I shot back. So I was just a small, unauthorized part of the grand experiment then. Good to know I'm still special. Ryan, you could have warned me. I pushed, voice cracking around the edges. You work with them, you're one of them. You stand in their chambers and pass judgment. You had to know something. His expression didn't change, but the air did. The bond between us pulsed, a tight, pained throb. You think I would participate in this? He asked quietly. That I would willingly turn you into a test subject? Yes. The word ripped out of me before I could stop it. Because you're the one who keeps telling me what I have to do. Come to the sessions. Stand in the circle. Let the bond decide if I live or die. Everything is rules and rituals with you. You sound exactly like them. The last word came out like a curse. I hadn't planned to yell at a man who could probably snap me in half by blinking too hard, but my emotions had never asked for permission before, and they weren't interested in starting now. For a heartbeat, he just stared at me. Then something in his face finally cracked. Enough, he said. Not loud, but with a sharpness that cut through my rant like a blade. The bond flared, responding to his rising emotion. My mark burned under my skin. If I had known, Thorn said, each word precise, I would have destroyed the circle. His voice dropped, roughening. I would have shattered the stone, broken the runes, and dragged you out of there myself. Silver eyes flashed, bright and angry now, not at me. At something bigger, older. Even if it cost me my title, he finished. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He meant it. I felt that truth through the bond as clearly as my own heartbeat. No hesitation, no lie, no calculated manipulation. Just raw, furious certainty. I became a judge to limit the council's excesses, he said. To keep our laws from becoming excuses for cruelty. His mouth twisted. Clearly, I have not been as successful as I believed. That's an understatement, I managed. He gave me a flat look. It didn't have its usual cutting edge. I knew the fifth ritual was being abused, he admitted. I did not know they had begun selecting subjects based on bloodlines. I did not know your name was on any list. His gaze sharpened. I reported the use of the circle that night as unauthorized. I believed it was a debt-clearing ritual for your brother. That itself was bad enough. Something inside my chest shifted at the mention of Jamie, equal parts guilt and anger. Why did they pick me? I asked. It came out smaller than I wanted. What does pure Omega even mean? Am I some kind of genetic project? It means your lineage has minimal alpha interference, he said, after a beat. No forced bonds, no breeding contracts, no chemical suppressants in your family line for at least 3 generations. Well, I said weakly, congrats to my ancestors on their poor life choices, I guess. His mouth almost twitched. Do not reduce yourself to their terminology, he said. You are not pure. You are not subject. You are Ryan Larson. You are... He stopped, like he'd walked too close to a cliff. My heart tripped. I'm what? A person, he said, withdrawing behind a cooler tone. Not an experiment. Regardless of what the council intended, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It didn't erase what I'd heard. It didn't magically fix the fact that my brother had been manipulated. That I'd been dragged into this by people who saw me as a tool. But for the first time, I believed something about Thorn that scared me more than his authority. He wasn't the one holding the knife. He was standing between me and the people who were. You said this isn't the first time, I said softly. That you've seen this before. His posture went even straighter, if that was possible. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. The last Omega I was bound to, he said finally, was chosen through a council-sanctioned pairing ritual. Different design, same arrogance. He moved away from the window, closer to his desk, but he didn't sit. His fingers curled against the polished surface, knuckles white. He trusted the system, Thorn continued. He believed the bond would protect him. That I would protect him. He signed the order for second stage binding, without reading the clauses. I warned him about what happened. I asked. Thorn's jaw clenched. They used the bond to control him, sent him into unstable packs as a stabilizer, a living leash around rabid alphas. When he broke, they tried to use the bond to drag him back from the edge. His eyes darkened, going almost stormy. He shifted on the council floor and died at my feet with their sigils burning in his skin. The room felt colder. I broke the circle that day, Thorn said. Too late for him. Not too late for me to understand exactly what we had made sacred. My throat was tight. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know how to reshape the image of him in my head. The rigid, terrifying judge, now standing next to the corpse of someone he'd been bound to. He noticed my silence. His gaze flicked to me, searching for judgment maybe. All I could manage was, I'm sorry. He blinked, as if that surprised him. You are not responsible, he said. I didn't say I was, I pointed out. I get it. A little. Having your life rerouted by fine print. This is more than fine print, he said. This is a system that devours those it claims to protect. I told myself I could change it from the inside. His mouth thinned. Now they are using me as proof their experiments are viable. The bond between us pulsed again, heavy with his anger, my confusion, our shared exhaustion. Is that why you're so obsessed with rules? I asked quietly. Because you watched what happens when no one follows them. I am not obsessed, he said. I gave him a look. You correct my posture in a ritual circle, Thorn. His lips pressed together, but the faintest hint of color rose along his cheekbones. Someone has to create boundaries, he murmured. Yeah, my voice softened. But someone also has to question who they're really protecting. Something shifted in the room. The distance between us felt smaller, like the air had thickened, pulling us closer. My mark warmed, then heated, a slow burn that spread up my forearm. Ryan, he said. And there was something in my name that hadn't been there before. Less command, more warning. I took a step closer anyway. You're not a monster, I said. You're just... I searched for the word. Trapped. Like me. His breath hitched, so quiet I almost missed it. We were standing close enough now that I could see every tiny detail, the faint scar near his eyebrow, the way a lock of black hair had fallen out of place, the tension in his jaw trying very hard not to soften. His hand lifted, hesitated, then reached for my wrist, the one with the mark. May I? He asked. The fact that he asked did something dangerous to my insides. Yeah, I said. And it came out as barely more than a breath. His fingers were warm and steady as they circled my wrist, thumb brushing over the glowing crescent. The room seemed to narrow to that single point of contact. The mark flared under his touch, light spilling between his fingers. A wave of sensation rolled through me. Heat, awareness, something too big and too raw to name. The bond hummed, loud and insistent, threading between us like a living thing. His gaze dropped to my mouth. My heart absolutely betrayed me. Speeding up so hard the mark pulsed in time with it, bright and urgent. I could feel his heartbeat too, through the connection. Steady, then not. Controlled, then not. He leaned in, just a little. I did too, before my brain could throw up any objections. The distance between us shrank until I could feel his breath, cool against my lips. The bond snapped. Pain ripped through my arm, up my neck, exploding behind my eyes. I gasped, doubling over, my free hand flying to my chest as if I could hold myself together. Thorn's grip tightened like he could anchor me through it. His own face twisted, a rare crack in his control as the feedback slammed into him too. Too soon, he ground out. The bond is unstable. Physical intimacy will... Yeah, I wheezed. Noted, 0 stars. Would not recommend. The pain ebbed slowly, leaving behind a hollow, aching awareness where the almost had been. He didn't let go of my wrist until the mark dimmed again, returning to its usual soft glow. When he did, I missed the contact immediately, which felt deeply inconvenient. We stood there in silence for a long moment, both of us breathing harder than normal, both pretending not to notice. Finally, I straightened, rolling my shoulders, trying to fold my messy feelings back into something that looked like a functioning human. He drives me insane, I thought. And for once, I didn't mean Jamie. Aloud I said, so. We hate the council, the ritual is a loaded gun pointed at my face, and kissing you might actually kill me. One corner of his mouth twitched. Accurate. Perfect, I muttered. He infuriates me. He scares me. And I really don't want to walk out of this office. I didn't say that last part. But the bond thrummed, traitorous, echoing it anyway. Which meant he felt it. His eyes softened. Just for a second. This is going to be a problem, I thought. Out loud, all I managed was a weak, I should go. Yes, he said. Then, quieter, but you will come back. My heart did that inconvenient thing again. Yeah, I admitted, turning toward the door. That's the problem. If someone had told me a week ago I'd willingly follow a council judge into an underground science horror show, I would have laughed and then blocked their number. Yet there I was, in a freight elevator that groaned like it regretted its life choices, descending beneath the city with Thorn at my side. The air grew colder the farther we went. The metallic scent of the elevator gave way to something else. Rust, dust, and a faint chemical tang that made the back of my throat itch. Remind me why we're doing this in person, I muttered, hugging myself against the chill. You don't have, interns for this? Council pages? Disposable henchmen? I don't outsource when it comes to threats against my bond, Thorn said. My mark warmed at the word my. Traitor. The elevator jolted to a stop. The gate slid open with a screech that echoed down a dark corridor, lined with bare concrete walls and exposed pipes. A single strip of dying fluorescent lighting buzzed overhead, painting everything in sickly yellow. I stepped out, boots scuffing on grit. Cozy. This level was decommissioned 20 years ago, Thorn said. Officially, let me guess. Unofficially, mad science basement. Essentially, we moved down the corridor, our footsteps kicking up little clouds of dust. Faint smells layered over the rust and concrete. Old antiseptic, something sour and stale, like forgotten fear. The hallway opened into a wide chamber, and my stomach did a slow, unpleasant flip. It was a lab. Or had been once. Rows of metal tables stood abandoned, surfaces cluttered with cracked glass beakers, empty vials, and stacks of curling paper. A bank of darkened monitors lined one wall, their screens coated in dust. On the opposite side, a series of cages sat embedded into the floor and walls. Some human-sized, some not. The kind of knot that had too many spikes and restraints to be comforting. The smell was stronger here. Rust. Old blood. Burned ozone. Okay, I breathed. This is disturbingly on-brand for the council. Thorn scanned the room, jaw tight. They shouldn't be using this space. It was sealed after the last incident. Define incident, I said, then immediately added, actually no, don't. I like sleeping. We spread out, picking through the debris. I flipped through scattered papers. Half-faded charts. Diagrams of runes layered over anatomical sketches. Lists of numbers with words like phase tolerance and instability threshold scribbled in the margins. Whoever was here didn't bother cleaning up, I said. Sloppy villains. Zero respect for archival integrity. They didn't expect anyone to come back down, Thorn said. No one is supposed to know this level exists. Except, the people who put my name on a menu. My fingers brushed over a stack of photos. Grainy shots of omegas in hospital gowns, their faces blurred out. My chest tightened. I shoved them back down, bile rising. Ryan. There was something in Thorn's tone that made me look up. He was standing near one of the far walls, where a large angled surface jutted out. A reinforced glass panel webbed with cracks. Runes were etched into the metal frame around it, dull and inert. Come here, he said. Is that safe? No. Great. I walked over anyway. Up close, I could see faint streaks on the glass, like something had clawed at it from the inside. My mark tingled, an odd fizzing sensation against my skin. Put your hand here, Thorn said, pointing to a rune at the edge of the panel. I frowned. You're just full of fun suggestions today. You said you wanted answers. He wasn't wrong. And after compatibility sessions and almost kills you kisses, touching dead glass seemed low on the risk scale. I pressed my palm to the metal. Cold shot up my arm. The mark on my wrist flared, bright blue beneath my sleeve. Then, suddenly, everything lit up. Light seeped from my fingers, tracing along the rune and into the cracks in the glass. It wasn't the harsh ritual glow from the circle, it was softer, more diffuse, like watercolor bleeding into paper. My breath caught. Thorn, I whispered. What's happening? Describe what you see, he said. The room shifted. Not physically, but layered over the present, ghostly and translucent, something else emerged. Like my eyes had decided to stream a past recording over the current feed. The lab wasn't empty anymore. People moved through it, figures in lab coats, attendants in council insignia. The tables were clean, equipment humming quietly. The cages were occupied now, shapes curled on cots, some sleeping, some pacing, some staring at nothing. The scent in my nose changed too, less dust, more antiseptic, sharp enough to sting. My heart hammered. I see people. This place when it was still in use. Can they see you? Thorn asked. One of the figures walked right through me, carrying a tray of vials. I don't think so, I said, voice shaky. It's like a recording, a vision echo, he said quietly. Triggered through the bond. A woman in a tailored coat approached the glass panel, her reflection sharp and cruel in its surface. I recognized her voice before I recognized her face. The council member from the hall. The one who'd said my name without saying it. Subject stability is holding, she said to the man beside her. The pure Omega profile is promising. All we require is a compatible alpha with sufficient authority. They turned away, their words fading with them as they moved toward the cages. My stomach twisted. The images flickered, fast-forwarding, scenes bleeding into each other. A young Omega screaming as runes flared around his cage. Another curled in a corner, rocking. A third standing perfectly still, eyes empty. My vision stuttered. Then, a different scene snapped into place. The lights in the lab were dimmer now. Fewer people moved. Equipment was gone, leaving dust outlines. The woman with the cruel voice stood in the center of the room, holding a datapad, speaking to a group of others in council insignia. "This line shows the highest resilience," she said, lifting the pad. "No prior forced bonds, no council breeding contracts, no chemical intervention. We'll begin the next phase with these candidates." The image sharpened as she tapped the screen, and the names projected into my vision, huge and searing. I saw them as if they'd been carved into the air. Subject A 117, Larson, Ryan. Subject A 118. My breath stopped. The echo shattered. The lab snapped back to its current state. Dust, rust, silence. My knees buckled. I grabbed the edge of the cracked glass, knuckles white. "Ryan." Thorn's hand closed around my shoulder, steady and grounding. "What did you see?" I couldn't get the words out at first. My throat felt tight, my pulse roaring in my ears. "They had a list," I managed finally. "A candidate list. For pure Omegas." My voice shook on the term. I was on it. By name. Subject to 117, Ryan Larson. That's how they knew. That's why all of this. Saying it out loud made it real in a way the vision hadn't. Thorn's fingers tightened just slightly, then loosened. Not hurting, just anchoring. "I'm sorry," he said. It wasn't empty. It wasn't pity. It was heavy, solid. Acknowledgement, rather than apology for something he couldn't undo. Before I could reply, a door slammed somewhere down the hall. Footsteps. More than one pair. Heavy, synchronized. Thorn's head snapped up. "Stay behind me," he said. He moved before I could argue, stepping between me and the sound, his aura flaring in. A way I hadn't felt before. A dark, lethal wave that made the hair on my arms stand up. Council security flooded into the lab. 4, then 6, then 8 of them. Armored and armed, eyes glowing faintly with controlled power. "Judge Thorn," the lead guard said. "You're not authorized to be here." "Neither are you," Thorn replied, voice gone flat and cold. "This facility is decommissioned. By council order, you are to leave the subject and return to the upper level." The subject. Like I wasn't standing right here. My mark burned hot. Thorn didn't move. No. For one taut heartbeat, everything hung in balance. Then the guards lunged. The next few seconds were a blur of movement. Thorn stepped forward, intercepting the first two with a speed that didn't look entirely human. His fist connected with a helmet, metal crumpled like foil. Claws flashed, his, theirs, and sparks flew where power met power. Someone swung a baton crackling with contained lightning. He caught it, twisted, and sent the wielder crashing into a table that exploded in a cascade of glass. "Stay back," he snapped over his shoulder, as one of the guards tried to circle toward me. "I am staying back," I shouted, ducking behind an overturned chair as another blast of energy scorched the floor. "This is my maximum back." Despite the chaos, something like dark humor crackled down the bond. One of the guards broke through his defense long enough to land a strike. An energy baton connecting with Thorn's side. He grunted, staggering, the impact sending a sharp stab of pain echoing through my own ribs via the bond. Anger snapped through me. Pure, hot, focused. I grabbed the nearest thing at hand, some old metal tray, and flung it at the guard's head. It hit with a satisfying clang. He stumbled, helmet ringing. "Hey!" I yelled. "No hitting my—" I choked on the word alpha, let it morph awkwardly. "Bond. Person. Elegant, Ryan." Really nailed that one. Thorn took the opening, slamming the guard to the ground and pinning him there with a boot. "Enough," he growled. His aura poured out, a crushing pressure that pushed the remaining guards to their knees. Their weapons flickered out, power suppressed under the weight of his command. "Retreat," he said, voice low and dangerous. Now, they went. Not because they wanted to, but because something in him gave them absolutely no choice. When the last of them staggered out, the lab fell silent again, broken only by the sound of our breathing. I straightened slowly, adrenaline making my hands shake. You okay? I asked. Yes, he said. He was lying. Blood stained the side of his shirt where the baton had hit, seeping through dark fabric. As he shifted, his breath hitched, just a fraction. I frowned. You're bleeding. It's minor. I walked over, ignoring the way my legs still felt like jelly. Sit. Ryan. Sit, Thorn. To my mild shock he did, perching on the edge of a table that didn't look entirely trustworthy, but held. I peeled back his shirt just enough to see the damage. A nasty raised welt marred his ribs, edged in burned skin. The metal baton had left a precise, ugly arc. That's not minor, I said. That's medium, at least. It will heal. Sure. But in the meantime it looks gross. I reached for a nearby cabinet, rummaging until I found an old first aid kit. The antiseptic inside was probably expired, but it smelled like it still had a kick. Hold still, I said. He did, though his breath hitched when the cold liquid touched the burn. Our bond hummed, echoing his discomfort in my nerves. I pushed past it, focusing on the motion, clean, cover, wrap. As I worked, warmth tingled at my fingertips. Faint blue light shimmered against his skin where I touched him, sinking into the bruised flesh. The charred edges smoothed. The angry red darkened, then faded. Thorn looked down, eyes widening slightly. You're channeling, bless you, through the bond. Healing acceleration. I mean, obviously, I said, even though I absolutely had not known that. I'm very talented. Multi-class. Emotional chaos and magical first aid. I finished taping the bandage and leaned back, satisfied. There, see? You can break 5 ribs with your bare hands, but you'd probably die trying to open a band-aid alone. He regarded me for a long moment. Then to my absolute shock he said, thank you. I froze. Did you just... Yes. Wow, I breathed. Look at us. Breaking generational trauma, and also dress codes. A corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile. My gaze drifted back to the cracked glass panel, to the ghosts of what I'd seen there. My name on a list. Subject a 117. This is real, I said quietly. I'm not imagining it. They did this on purpose. Yes, Thorn said. His eyes were no longer just angry, they were deadly. Which means we now have proof. And leverage. He slid off the table, moving more carefully this time, and extended a hand. Ready? He asked. I looked at his hand, then at the lab, then at him. No sarcasm came. No joke rose to the surface. Yeah, I said, placing my hand in his. The bond pulsed, steady and strong. I'm ready. If evil had a brand, Lyra would be its minimalist, hyper-polished CEO. We were halfway back across the lab, archives chip in Thorn's pocket, and my hand still. Faintly tingling from healing his ribs, when the temperature in the room shifted. Not the physical kind. Something in the air went sharp and bright, like someone had pulled a knife made of light. Leaving already? A woman's voice asked, smooth as glass. I turned. She stood in the doorway the guards had used earlier, framed by the dim corridor behind her. Tall, poised, the kind of beautiful that made you want to straighten your spine even if she wasn't looking at you. Her hair was a cool, icy blonde, twisted into an elegant knot at the nape of her neck. Her suit was white, not practical white, but the deliberate, arrogant kind that dared anyone to try and stain it. Silver pins glinted at her collar, forming the council crest. Her eyes, though, were the worst part. Pale, almost colorless gray, like the sky right before a storm, and just as interested in whether you lived through it. Lyra, Thorn said. He didn't have to raise his voice. The way he said her name carried enough weight to crack stone. She smiled, small and precise. You still say it like a sentence, Thorn. So this was the one who wanted to turn people like me into lab notes. Former partner. Council rising star. Aspiring goddess. I hated her on sight. You weren't invited, Thorn said. Neither were you, she replied lightly, stepping into the lab. The runes carved into the floor flickered when her heels clicked over them, reacting to her presence like obedient pets. But here we are, both trespassing. How nostalgic. Her gaze slid to me. And this must be subject a 117, she murmured. You're even more interesting up close. Wow, I said. That's not creepy at all. Do you usually address people by their catalog number or am I just special? Something like amusement flickered in her eyes. Special? Yes. Very much so. She tilted her head, studying me. You weren't supposed to bind with him, you know? My pulse spiked. Excuse me? She waved a hand toward Thorn. The judge here is inconvenient. The circle was calibrated for a different outcome entirely. Explain, Thorn said. His tone could have cut glass. Lyra walked farther into the room, fingertips trailing along a dusty table like she owned every molecule in it. We designed the fifth ritual to match omegas with alphas who could truly use them, she said. Strategic pairings, efficient, clean. You, Ryan, were meant to prove the final phase, a pure omega bound to a council superior, unencumbered by sentimental resistance. Her lips curved, humorless. That superior was supposed to be me. My brain hiccuped. You. Yes. Her gaze sharpened. I requested your file myself. An omega with no generational tampering, strong latent resonance, high emotional output. You're a stabilizer and an amplifier in one. With you at my side, we could have ended the era of feral alphas entirely. No more rogue packs. No more unsanctioned bonds. Just order. And what do I get out of that? I asked. Matching monogrammed lab coats? You get power. She said it like it was obvious. A place in a system that fears you instead of using you. A seat at the table instead of a cage under it. I laughed, harsh. You literally put cages under your table. I saw them. Progress is never pretty, she said. But you were never meant to be in the cages. I felt Thorn go still beside me, his aura darkening. He is not your asset, he said. The circle chose. The circle malfunctioned, she corrected, eyes snapping to him. The warmth vanished from her voice, leaving only steel. You walked into that hall like a crack in the system, Thorn. Your rank, your proximity. Your stubborn refusal to stay out of things that aren't your jurisdiction. Of course the ritual rerouted. Magic seeks strong anchors. It picked the wrong one. Her gaze flicked between us, cool calculation churning. I'm simply here to fix it. Every instinct I had screamed that was a very bad sentence. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, flat device, metal, etched with familiar lines and sigils. She placed it on the nearest table with a soft click. The runes carved into the floor woke up. Blue light slithered out from the device, racing across the stone like spilled ink, following old channels I hadn't noticed before. Where it passed, dormant markings flared to life, forming a new pattern. Around us, circles within circles, intersecting lines, a web tightening. Thorn stepped forward instantly. Lyra. Stop this. She arched a brow. You've always been better at consequences than at prevention. She touched 2 fingers to the device. Pain hit me like a freight train. It wasn't the sharp, localized burn of the bonding circle. This was tearing. A deep, wrenching force that hooked into the center of my chest and yanked. Hard, like it was trying to rip something out of me by the roots. I doubled over with a strangled sound, clutching at my sternum. The mark on my wrist blazed white hot. Thorn. His name broke in my mouth. I felt him too. Through the bond, through the shared current between us. His pain slammed into mine, a feedback loop of agony. He staggered, one hand flying to his own chest, teeth gritted. The anti-ritual destabilizes the existing bond, Lyra explained conversationally, like she was giving a lecture. Don't worry. It won't kill you. Not if I time the severing correctly. Her eyes fixed on me again. Once you're loose, we can rebind you properly. To me, sounds awful, I gasped. The web of light tightened, bright strands arcing between the runes and our marks. The bond between us stretched, thinner and thinner, until I could feel individual threads fraying. Let go, something inside me whispered. It will stop hurting if you let go. I'd spent most of my life letting go of things. Apartments, jobs, safety, sleeping through the night. Not this. Absolutely not this. I forced my head up. Thorn was on one knee now, braced against the floor, eyes squeezed shut, sweat beating at his temple. His aura strained, trying to hold the connection together by sheer stubbornness. He'd told me what he'd lost in this system. He'd promised he'd have destroyed the circle if he'd known. And now someone who thought she was a goddess wanted to rewrite me like a line item. No, I croaked. Lyra's brows lifted. No. I'm not. Your experiment, I forced out, every word scraped. And I'm not. You're Omega. Ryan, Thorn ground out, don't. Shut up, I snapped at both of them. I am so tired of other people narrating my life. Pain surged again, nearly knocking me flat. The web pulsed, another thread snapping with a sound I felt more than heard. In the roaring static of it, something bright flickered. Not outside. Inside. My fingers began to glow. Not just the mark, my whole hand, faint at first, then brighter blue-white light, leaking from my skin, like someone had cracked me open and found a star underneath. Thorn's head jerked up, eyes wide. Vision echo, he said hoarsely. Ryan. Yeah, I panted. I'm getting that. The lab around us blurred. For a second, I saw it overlaid with another scene. The same room, different time. Lyra standing where I was, younger, less polished, hands outstretched as some terrified Omega screamed in the circle. The same web of anti-ritual runes, the same device. But this time, I could see the pattern. The way the lines twisted, the anchor points, the choke points. The places where energy pooled and where it escaped. The shape of the spell. It wasn't just a net, it was a redirect. A tunnel designed to take the raw screaming energy of a bond and shove it somewhere else. To someone else. To her. You're not severing us, I rasped, realization dawning cold. You're trying to hijack it. Lyra's smile was thin. Why destroy something so useful? Rage sliced through the pain, clean and sharp. No, I said again. Louder. It's ours. My glowing hand moved on its own, sketching in the air. Lines of light followed my fingers, tracing new shapes over the existing web, crossing it out, rerouting it, like drawing over a bad sketch. Thorn pushed himself to his feet, swaying. Our eyes met across the burning lines between us. We didn't talk. We didn't have to. I reached for him with my free hand, fighting the weight of the spell dragging us apart. He came to meet me, step by agonizing step, forcing his way through the wavering air. Every movement sent new spikes of pain through our shared channel. When our fingers finally closed around each other, something snapped back into place with a force that stole my breath. The anti-ritual shuddered. You can't override a council-grade spell, Lyra said sharply. The smoothness cracked. You don't have the training. Maybe not, I panted. But I have motivation. And an Omega's resonance, Thorn added, voice low, steadying again. His grip on my hand tightened. And a judge's authority. Our marks flared in unison. We stepped together into the center of the glowing web, into the heart of her spell, and turned it. Instead of pulling away, I shoved everything I had toward Thorn. Every fear, every stubborn spark of hope, every half-formed feeling I'd been trying very hard not to name. I opened the floodgates and let it all pour through the bond, not as a weapon this time, but as a choice. His aura surged to meet mine, not crushing, not consuming, wrapping around it, anchoring it, returning that trust with his own. A promise made not in words, but in how tightly he held on when everything else was trying to tear us apart. For a moment we were back in the circle in Luxuria, but this time there were no spectators, no council, no carved scripts dictating the terms. Just us. I choose him, I thought fiercely. And the bond echoed it back, magnified. Light exploded. The web shattered. Lines of Lyra's spell breaking like spun glass. The device on the table sparked and blew, a burst of magic sending it skidding across the floor. Lyra staggered backward, one hand flying to her chest as if something had punched through her ribs. For the first time her perfect composure faltered. Her eyes widened, fury and shock warring there. What did you? She gasped. Your anti-ritual relies on treating the bond like an object. Thorn said, his voice calm again, but carrying a knife-edge satisfaction. A cord to be cut, redirected, spliced. He stepped forward, still holding my hand. You forgot it's a living thing, he finished. And living things can refuse. Blue-white light crackled around us, then sank back into our skin. My hand stopped glowing. The mark on my wrist settled into a steady, warm hum, sturdier than before. Lyra straightened slowly, breathing hard. Her white suit was dusted with debris now, one sleeve singed. This changes nothing, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier smoothness. The council will not protect you when they find out you sabotaged their work. They're already aware you came down here. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, far above us, echoing down through stone and steel. Reinforcements heading our way. On the contrary, Thorn said. It changes everything. He reached into his jacket and tapped the chip in his pocket. We have proof of your unauthorized experiments, he said. Of your candidate lists. Of your intent to weaponize Omegas. The council may be many things, Lyra, but they are very protective of their reputation. Her eyes chilled. You think you can turn them against me? I think, he said, they are about to choose which monster hurts their image less. For a second, something raw flickered across her face. Frustration, bitter, almost sympathy. You always did aim too low, Thorn, she said quietly. You could have ruled with me. He shook his head. I have no interest in ruling over ruins. Her gaze slid back to me. And you? You'd rather be tied to him? To a man who will always put the law before you? I squeezed his hand. I'd rather be tied to someone who hates what they made of the law, I said, and is willing to break it for the right reasons. She held my gaze a heartbeat longer, then smiled. A thin, brittle thing. Then you'll both die with your principles intact, she said. Comforting. She moved her fingers in a quick sigil, and the runes under her feet flared. A transport glyph, I realized. Too late. Light swallowed her form when it faded. The space she'd occupied was empty. Just a scorch mark on the cracked floor. Above us, the sirens grew louder. I exhaled shakily. So, good news, Goddess Complex interrupted. Bad news, the angry pantheon is on its way. Thorn's hand tightened around mine, steady, solid. Then we go up, he said. We present our evidence. And we force them to choose. I looked at our joined hands, at the faint glow still pulsing under my skin. Then up at the ceiling where the sound of approaching council forces trembled through the stone. He terrifies me, I thought. She terrifies me. The entire system terrifies me. But I did not let go. Okay, I said. Let's make some gods bleed. The council chamber was designed to make you feel small. High, arched ceiling. Stone walls the color of old bones. Long rows of tiered benches circling the central floor like a hungry amphitheater. Runes etched into every surface hummed with restrained power, casting a cold, bluish light that made everyone look a little paler, a little less alive. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat the 12 counselors. Robes pristine, expressions carved out of granite. Thorn and I stood in the middle of the floor, under a circle of light like defendants in some cosmic courtroom drama. My palms were sweating. My mark hummed, warm and steady. A reminder, I wasn't here alone. Judge Thorn, the presiding counselor, a gaunt man with iron-gray hair and eyes like dull coins, spoke first. His voice bounced off the stone. You stand accused of unauthorized access to restricted facilities, obstruction of council, operations, and the unlawful bonding of an Omega through an unstable fifth ritual. The word unlawful sharpened, like he savored it. Thorn's shoulders were straight, his posture perfect. The picture of a man who'd spent years in this chamber, delivering verdicts instead of receiving them. I did not perform the ritual, he said. I responded to an active bond. You chose to accept it, another counselor said. You entered the circle without sanction. You interfered with an ongoing procedure. Procedure. Right. That was one word for magical human experimentation. You endangered an Omega, a third added. That did it. I think we're skipping the part where you put him on a list, I said. My voice sounded too loud, even to me. The eyes of the council, every single one of them, swung toward me. Omega. Unranked. Supposed to be quiet. Too late for that. The presiding counselor's lips thinned. Subject a 117. My name, I cut in, pulse pounding, is Ryan Larson. The words rang in the chamber, hanging there like a dare. I felt Thorn's gaze on me, warmth through the bond, steadying. You may address the council only when spoken to, one of them snapped. Yeah, see, that's kind of the problem, I said, inexplicably calm now that I'd started. It was like stepping onto ice and realizing you were either going to glide or eat it. You've done a lot of talking about me, lists, files, experiment profiles. Pure Omega. Subject to 117. I let the phrases taste foul in my mouth. But you haven't actually talked to me. Murmurs rippled through the benches above us. Advisors, minor officials, audience members, who'd come for the spectacle. I recognized a few faces from Luxuria. Club staff, bartenders, bouncers, even a couple of regulars. Alphas and betas. Watching. Some of them had seen that ritual circle firsthand. Good. Your experiences are regrettable, the iron-haired counselor said. The way someone might talk about a delayed shipment. However, this hearing concerns Judge Thorn's misconduct, not your feelings. Oh, it concerns both, I shot back. Because you're accusing him of binding me illegally, and I'm here to tell you he didn't. A low hum of surprise moved around the room. The counselor's eyes narrowed. The fifth ritual circle activated outside of protocol. No sanction, no supervision. That is, by definition, illegal. The circle activated because you tampered with it, I said. Because Lyra, I made sure to say her name clearly, loudly. And whoever helped her were running an off-the-books experiment in that underground lab you pretend doesn't exist. A few faces tightened at that. Guilt has a certain look. Thorn reached into his jacket and held up the small chip we'd pulled from the lab. Here, he said, voice calm but carrying, is documentation of those experiments, candidate lists, monitoring logs, footage of unsanctioned anti-ritual trials, all conducted under Lyra's authority, and by extension, yours, because no one here stopped her. The iron-haired counselor's jaw clenched. You accessed restricted archives without permission. Yes, Thorn said. To uncover crimes committed in your name. I stepped forward, a half-step past his shoulder, so we stood side by side. You want to talk about unlawful bonds? I said. Let's talk about cages under the city. About omegas screaming while your people measured instability thresholds. Let's talk about that anti-ritual Lyra tried to use on us in the lab. She wasn't severing the bond. She was trying to steal it. Turn me into her personal leash for people like you. Someone in the benches swore under their breath. You are making serious accusations, a counselor said, voice tight. Do you have proof? Yes, Thorn said simply. He does. My fingers tingled. I lifted my hand, letting the light come. It wasn't as intense as in the lab, no echo of the past fully overlaying the present. But my mark flared, sending a ripple of power across the stone. Runes woke up under our feet, responding to the bond. Images flickered in the air like reflections on glass. The lab, full and active. Lyra standing over a circle, calm while someone begged. A screen displaying a list of names, mine highlighted at the top. Her voice saying pure Omega profile and next candidate with clinical delight. The anti-ritual net, glowing as it tried to tear us apart. The moment we turned it. Gasps echoed all around. This is impossible, one counselor whispered. Bond echoes require a willing conduit, Thorn said. Which you created when you forced the fifth ritual on an unconsenting Omega and tethered him to a judge. He inclined his head, just enough to be disrespectful. Your actions have consequences. The iron-haired counselor's composure finally cracked. He surged to his feet. You overstepped, Thorn. You presume to judge the council itself? Yes, Thorn said. Just that. No apology. No hesitation. I swore to uphold our laws, he went on. Not to protect those who twist them. The council does not stand above judgment. Not when it cages its own people and calls it progress. For a long taut moment, nobody moved. Then a voice rang out from the benches. He's right. I looked up. One of Luxuria's security captains, huge, scarred, unmistakably alpha, had stood. He crossed his arms over his chest, gaze hard. I've seen the way you treat Omegas who fall outside your neat little contracts, he said. You call it regulation. It looks a lot like fear. Another voice joined. The club's owner, immaculate in a dark suit, stood as well. Luxuria operates under your license, he said. If I had known you were turning my patrons into lab stock, we'd have had this hearing a lot sooner. More rows, small pack leaders, minor officials, Omegas from respectable families, eyes wide but determined. The sound in the room shifted, the balance tilting. You can't silence all of us, someone shouted. This isn't order, another added. It's control. The iron-haired counselor looked around and, for the first time, seemed to see more than people to manage. He saw a crowd that wasn't afraid of him anymore. This chamber is not a forum, he snapped. Sit down. No, I cut in. My voice wasn't loud, but the runes carried it, amplifying it through the hall. You don't get to tell us to sit down and be good subjects anymore. You don't get to call people like me pure, or unstable, or viable, like we're potion ingredients. I took a breath. I chose him, I said, clear and steady. In that lab, in that circle. In the moment your experiment tried to rip us apart, I chose, not your runes, not your charts, me. The bond thrummed, agreeing. If you call that bond illegal, I finished, then maybe your laws are the problem. The silence that followed was different this time, less controlled, more charged. Finally, one of the older counselors, a woman with deep lines around her eyes that looked more like worry than disdain, spoke. "The evidence against Lyra is clear," she said slowly. "These experiments were not sanctioned by a full vote. She acted with a faction, using this council as cover. Convenient, my brain supplied. But I heard the undercurrent, someone had to burn, and they decided it wasn't going to be all of them. Her position is revoked," the woman continued. "Effective immediately. Her supporters will be investigated. The 5th ritual program is suspended pending full review." Suspended. Not destroyed. But it was a start. "And Thorn?" the iron-haired counselor demanded. "His defiance cannot go unpunished." Thorn didn't flinch. "I resign," he said. The word dropped like a stone in water. Shock rippled across the room. Judges didn't resign. They died in office or aged out into advisory roles. They didn't walk away. "You don't have the authority to," the presiding counselor began. "I do," Thorn said. "Your position is not the only one with power here." He unpinned the judge's sigil from his lapel. For a second, he weighed it in his hand. Then he set it gently on the stone pillar in front of him, as if laying down a burden that had long since bruised his shoulders. The runes around it dimmed. "For what it's worth," he added, looking up at the council, "you're safer without me among you. I'm tired of pretending your rituals are sacred when they're just cages with better branding." The older woman watched him for a long moment. "Very well," she said at last. "To the others more than to him. Let the record show, Judge Thorn has relinquished his title. Effective immediately." A low murmur swelled. Speculation, outrage, approval, fear, all swirling together. But under it, I felt something else. A crack. A shift. The beginning of a fall. The council still sat on their raised dais, still wrapped in their robes and power. But they were no longer gods. The illusion had broken. People saw the man behind the curtain now, and that was a fracture no amount of magic could fix. We turned to go. At the threshold of the chamber, I glanced back. Thorn walked beside me, shoulders less rigid than I'd ever seen them. The weight of the sigil was gone. The bond between us hummed, not as a leash, not as an experiment, but as something we'd both decided to hold on to. For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't feel like the judge. He felt like just a man. And for the first time I realized that meant something terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. He was free. And so, possibly, was I. Night in the city always felt quieter after a storm. And we'd just survived the kind of political hurricane that usually came with body bags and new laws. But now? Now the alley behind Luxuria was calm. Moonlight spilled across the brick walls. Warm yellow lamps cast a soft glow over the freshly primed surface where I stood on a ladder, brush in hand. My fingers smelled like paint. My clothes were a mess. My heart was surprisingly steady. The mural was almost done. A swirl of blues and silvers. Sharp angles of shattered runes dissolving into softer strokes, figures reaching for each other through a broken ritual circle. My story, messy and blazing and too big to hold anywhere except on a wall. "You're getting paint in your hair," a familiar voice said behind me. I didn't turn. "Don't sneak up on me. I might fall and sue you, and since you're no longer a judge, you can't claim diplomatic immunity." His footsteps stopped below the ladder. "I didn't have diplomatic immunity. Then, you were just insufferable recreationally." "Good to know." Silence. The comfortable kind. I kept painting, adding a sweep of white that curled around the central figures. One tall and shadowed, the other flickering like they were made of light. I pretended not to feel his gaze tracing every motion. "When did you start this?" Thorn asked. "The minute I could breathe again after that council circus," I said. "Figured I should put the trauma somewhere productive. On a wall, outdoors, where strangers can see and worry about my mental stability." He made a quiet sound. Almost a laugh. Almost. I dipped my brush, lifted it, then paused. "Don't come closer," I said. His footsteps stopped immediately. "Did I do something wrong?" "Yes, you did." I pointed the brush at him without turning around. "You haven't apologized yet. For calling Omega's artifacts back in the ritual hall." I could practically hear his wince. "Uh-huh. So until you fix that, stay right there. No looming allowed." He sighed, the put-upon world-weary kind of sigh that said he regretted his life choices but also wasn't going anywhere. "Ryan," he said, "I concede defeat." I paused. Slowly looked over my shoulder. He stood in the lamp glow, no robes, no judge's sigil, no aura of impossible authority. Just Thorn. in a dark shirt rolled to the elbows, looking almost humanly tired. And ridiculously, unfairly handsome. You are not an artifact, he admitted. Continue, I said, pointing with my brush again. You are... His jaw tightened like the words physically pained him. The catastrophe of my life. I blinked. Then laughed. Loud, sudden, impossible to hold back. Wow, so romantic. Truly. Shakespeare could never... It was meant as an endearment. I put the brush down and climbed off the ladder. Well, it worked. Now you may approach. He took one step. Then another. The third put him close enough that I could see the faint bruise still fading along his ribs, where I'd healed him. The soft exhaustion around his eyes. The warmth of his hand, hovering near mine like he wanted permission. Funny. After everything we'd survived, runes, visions, anti-rituals, this was the moment that made my pulse stutter. Ryan, he said quietly. I tilted my chin up. This time, no magic, no circles, no runes telling us what we feel. His eyes softened. Agreed. And if the bond freaks out again, I swear, I'm suing someone. A small curve touched his mouth. I'll handle it. He reached out, not grabbing, not claiming. Just reaching. I closed the distance. His hand slid to my jaw, warm and steady. Mine curled around the front of his shirt. Our marks hummed. Not flaring, not burning. Just a gentle thrum beneath the skin, like a heartbeat echo. The kiss was slow. Not desperate. Not painful. Not forced by the crushing weight of ritual magic. Just him. Just me. Choosing. He kissed like a man finally allowed to want something. I kissed like someone who'd been running too long and finally stopped. When we broke apart, breath warm in the cool night air, he rested his forehead against mine. You okay? He murmured. I'm amazing, I said. Terrified, but amazing. He let out a quiet exhale that might have been a laugh. We'll face whatever comes next together. I nodded, tracing the line of his jaw with my thumb. Yeah. On our terms this time. We stepped back, hands brushing, the bond humming like a living ribbon between us, steady, warm, unbroken. I looked at the mural, the tangled shapes, the burst of light where two figures reached toward each other through a shattered ritual. It wasn't perfect, neither was I. But it was mine. Epilogue. If I was an experiment, then I guess the final result was this. I found someone who sees me, not the omega, not the subject, not the pure candidate, but the whole chaotic, stubborn paint-covered me. And for the first time in my life, I let myself be someone I chose.